Hi, I'm Johnny from ultimatepapermache.com, and I want to talk to you about turtles today. I don't have a new turtle that I can just kind of show you right now because I just haven't made one for a long time. But I do have some turtles that I made in the past, and I want to tell you about those. A couple of years ago, I put out the video about the new paper cement clay recipe. It was a recipe that was developed by one of my readers, and I showed you that recipe. I'm going to put a link to it down below, and I also showed you that I made this little toad sitting on a leaf using that recipe. It was really fun. And when I did that, I asked everybody to give me some suggestions about what else they would like me to make for outdoor sculptures. I got a ton of suggestions, and almost every single one of them was a different animal. Except for the turtle. A lot of people wanted an outdoor turtle. They wanted me to show how to make one. And I just haven't done it. In fact, I haven't made any of the items that showed up on that list. It was just so many really good ideas, but I haven't made any. And the reason for that is simply that I don't have any place to put them. In fact, I even brought this guy back inside of the house after I did leave him outside to make sure that it was going to stand up to Minnesota weather, both summer and winter. And then I brought him back in the house because there really isn't any place for him to go. I live in a very small town. I've got a 1/4 acre lot. Half of it is taken up with a really big vegetable garden and my chicken yard. The other half has the house, which is just about the most boring house in town, and there's no landscaping because I just haven't had time to do it. I mow the lawn, that's it. So because I don't have any place to put any outdoor sculptures, I just haven't felt, what am I going to do with them when they're done? And so that's just going to have to wait until I get some landscaping put in. But I did make those turtles, and I want to talk to you about them because I made a whole bunch of mistakes when I made both of them. When I made this little guy, I actually made a video showing you all the things that at the time I knew I had done wrong. And I basically went ahead and showed you anyway, even though I kept changing my mind all the way through it, because I just wanted to let you guys know that you don't have to know how to make something before you get started. You can just figure it out as you go and still end up with something that's really cute. Before I made that one, I made a tortoise that I really liked, and there was a big mistake that I made with that one, but basically putting them together made more sense. And so in this video, I kind of want to show you what I should have done when I was making the little one. For the old tortoise, I don't even have any video because I made him a long time before I had a video camera. So we're just going to have to see the still pictures of that one. Now for the little turtle, the biggest mistake I had was making the shell first and then making a separate body to go inside of the shell. In the video, I show you several different ways that I thought I might make it if I did it again. But really, the mistake was making the shell as a separate thing because the shell is the turtle's rib cage. It's a part of their body. So it doesn't really make sense to build a shell and then put a body inside of it. It made a whole lot more sense doing it the way I made my tortoise. I made the entire thing from the start with crumpled paper and masking tape with the shape of the shell actually attached to it with the legs and and neck sticking out. And then I did add a little bit of shaping for the edge of the shell. I happen to have some old padded envelopes in the house, and that's what I used for that edging to go all the way around the top part. And then I did turn him over and I put a flat piece of cardboard on the bottom because they do have a kind of a hard shell on their tummies too. I don't think it's quite as hard or as thick as the top one, but they do have some protection down there. And then I just covered the entire thing with paper mache clay. That was really fun because the tortoise had a lot of sculptured details on his shell, and he had some really cool little bumps on his legs and his skin. I did almost all of the sculpting with paper mache clay because I used crumpled paper. If I did that again, I would probably make him out of crumpled foil like I made the body for the little turtle. For the little guy, I made the armature for the body itself out of wire and covered it up with crumpled foil, just the same way that you would do if you were making like a dog sculpture. And that just didn't make any sense because almost all of it's going to be covered up, and they don't have a little body inside of a shell. It's just not the way turtles work. So it was really hard for me to get it all fitted together because I had made everything separate, and I had to just keep fiddling around. And I wouldn't have had to do that if I did it the way I had done my tortoise and make the whole thing to start with. I even had to, on the little guy, one of the big problems I had was because the shell was separate, and he does have to be able to stick his head out of the shell and his legs and his tail. And I shaped the shell incorrectly, so I had to keep reshaping the shell so that the little body that I made could stick out. Like I said, it didn't make any sense. But using the air dry clay worked really well. And that from that point on, it was done exactly the same way as the tortoise was, except for the little guy had a smooth shell with some really interesting painted patterns on them. Well, I painted them. Of course, they just is made naturally on a real turtle. So even though it didn't have the sculpted tortoise shell, which was really cool, it did still have a really interesting shell. And both of them actually, in the end, came out really cool. Now, the one thing that I did about the tortoise that didn't work, it was made with paper mache clay, which itself is not waterproof at all. If it gets rained on, it is going to get soft. But I had been reading at that time that you could waterproof things by giving it a coat of marine varnish. And like I said, this was like 10 years ago when I made it, and everybody was saying marine varnish, that's the thing, that's the ticket. So I did paint him, and I gave it 2 coats of marine varnish. I put it outside right next to my pond underneath a rhubarb plant. It was in the shade. And it worked just fine for several months, but then the rhubarb kept getting bigger, and it got to the point where I couldn't find my tortoise anymore. He was in there, and stuck underneath those leaves. So I pulled him out and I put him next to the pond in the sun. It took about maybe a week before the sun had cracked the varnish and the paint. The next time it rained, the water got through and it softened the paper mache clay. Just a little bit, because I went and grabbed him and brought him back inside real fast. But I was so disappointed with that whole thing, and I don't know, I threw it out. God, that was dumb. I threw this out too. This is one of my favorite sculptures that I ever made, except for the black shiny paint. I loved that chicken that was taking care of those baby Siamese kittens. I just loved it. But I hated the shiny black paint. I threw it away. All I had to do was put some matte varnish over it, and it wouldn't have been shiny anymore. So I don't have a tortoise at all, and I want to make another one when I get some landscaping, so I have some place to put it. But I won't use, obviously, the marine varnish. It really didn't work. I don't remember what kind of varnish I put on my gnome, but that didn't work either, because the paint just all crackled up and just got horrible. So what I would use is this Rust-Oleum matte clear enamel. That's what I used on Toad. And I've also recently seen a video from a fellow who makes concrete statuary for a living. He says that the cement itself doesn't need any sealer, but the paint does, just to protect it a little better. He uses the Rust-Oleum enamel, but he happens to use one that has a different label on it. I don't know, maybe it's slightly different or what, but it works for him. And it definitely worked for me. So that's what I would use again. If you get the wrong varnish over paint and the sun hits it, it really doesn't work. If I made another tortoise, I would use paper cement clay or Paltaya or just plain old cement, something that actually belongs outside rather than paper mache clay, and I would paint it and cover it with a clear enamel, because that appears to be what will protect paint the longest. Now, I'm still not going to be making any outdoor sculptures at all until I can get a little bit of landscaping or a deck or something outside. It's not very much fun to spend hours making something and then not have any place to put it. But I do hope to have something new next week, so in the meantime, go make something and come visit me, ultimatepapermache.com. I'll see you there.